It's time for season 3, bitches.
I'm Jessie.
And I'm Amanda.
And we're just a couple pregnant bitches navigating motherhood together. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Pregnant Bitches podcast. Today we have a very special guest. She's actually an old friend of mine. We went to university or college together. Her name is Sari Diskin. She is a fellow mama and another mom influencer / blogger. I don't know what the right word is anymore. But she is joining us today to chat a little bit about her motherhood journey, share some of her fertility struggles and, where she is now in her journey. And we just wanted to have her on and have a cool, honest, open conversation. So, Sari, welcome.
Thank you. Jessie forgot to share with the class that you are my little sister in the sorority.
Yeah. I had that in my list. Yes. Sari and I were in a sorority together, and she was my big sister. And actually, we look somewhat
You kind of look similar, I was going to say.
Yeah, and I used her ID to get into all the bars
there you go.
3 years early. And I actually had a worse time getting in with my own ID afterwards. I had to keep using her ID.
Funny.
Oh my gosh. That's only like a year because the drinking age is 19, so it was only like a year.
Yeah, exactly. But
that is so funny.
Yeah, it was very funny.
I love that.
So Sari was my big sis. I don't know.
And here we are. We've come full circle.
And
welcome, Sari. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks, guys. I'm excited to be here too.
So maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, just in a couple sentences, just to give our
viewers a little knowledge, and then we'll get straight into it.
Sure. So I'm Sari. I'm from Toronto, just like you guys, but now I live in Michigan. I met an American boy and made my way across the border, and spent my career in advertising, and soon moved into influencing sort of by accident. And since 2017, that business has really expanded, and I am now a full-time content creator and mom. It's been quite the journey. I can't believe it. It's still wild that we're all moms.
It's crazy.
And business owners.
Yeah, Sari was like an OG influencer. How long ago did you start your blog?
I started in 2017.
Wow, it's been a while.
Yeah, long time.
It's been a while. I mean, at first it was all food. I didn't even show my face, and then it's a mix of lifestyle and food. It's fun. I have a full-time management team, and it's a very interesting career. As a mom, it's definitely even more interesting because you sort of open yourself up to opinions of other people who you don't know.
We're starting to get into that world a little bit.
We're getting the backlash.
I love
Jessie
it.
loves it.
I go
She's
to
just
Tam.
responding. She's just going at them, and I'm like, all for it. I'm all for it.
Can you quality control my DMs? Because
she would. She's incredible at it.
The funniest is the weird, rude messages are from men.
I don't get a lot of men ones. I get a lot of trying to be nice advice, passive aggressive kind of thing.
That's worse.
And I know that it probably comes from a good place, but it just doesn't help. Yesterday, I got a DM that was I went to my first NFL football game this past weekend. It was such a fun experience, but it's loud.
Oh yeah, I saw that. That looked really cute.
It was. I mean, it was amazing. I want to go again. Anyways, I said it was really loud in the stadium because it's a football game. A concert would be similar levels of loud. And someone messaged me being like, "That's not good for the baby. It can affect the fetus. Just so you know, heart." And I was like,
"Oh,
I think
you're pregnant, baby."
Yeah, the baby in the tummy. I didn't bring Miles to this. I brought Miles to a football game that was outdoors. It was different. This was in a stadium that was covered, so it's louder.
Oh my God, people are nuts.
People have nothing better to do. Honestly.
Somebody wrote to me, "Take her kid."
Yeah. I was Jessie was like, take him.
I was like,
good luck to you.
Take him every Saturday. He's yours.
I actually am looking for a nanny, so
yeah. Exactly.
Sari's hiring. Okay, well, so just so everyone knows, Sari has a little boy, Miles, who's 3, right?
Yeah, he'll be 3 this month.
So he's the same year as our boys,
yes.
Arlo and Ziggy.
Yes.
And then you are now pregnant again. Congrats to you.
Yes.
But I know that road wasn't an easy one. And I think, neither Amanda and I have had our issues with getting pregnant initially, but we never struggled with fertility issues per se. And I know It's very common. A lot of women experience it, but not a lot of people talk about it. And it's important because people feel very alone, and it's not fair that they should feel alone because it happens to so many women. Although every story is unique, I feel like, it's
time to talk about it.
It's time to talk about it. And I think your story is really powerful. And I think a lot of people would really love to hear it and know that, like, they're not alone. And now you have the perspective of the other side of it. So, like, tell us a little bit about, like, what happened and then, maybe where you are today.
Sure. So, yes, I'm now 22 weeks
pregnant
with my second. So I'm just over halfway. I'm due in January. I'm really excited. I'm also a little nervous to go to 2, but we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Yes, we will get into the 2.
So it was interesting because I grew up with, my mom had gone through fertility issues in like the 80s, and then had 3 kids really close together. And I sort of knew growing up that she had gone through that. So I knew that that was a possibility for me, even though it's not, unless there's a specific gene, it's not like a genetic thing per se. But that was always in the back of my head. And I think when I was ready to have kids, like around the age of 30, in my mind, I was like, I'm never going to get pregnant. This is going to be such a struggle. Oh my gosh. I had a lot of anticipatory anxiety around it because that's sort of what I knew from my mom explaining her like 7-year journey in the 80s, which at the time nobody talked about. So I was very, very stressed about it, but lo and behold, I got pregnant on the very first try, and I was shocked. I didn't even know, like, I had a very regular cycle. I think I was 30. So, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, oh, great. Like, I guess I won't have any struggles. And I kind of went through that pregnancy just mostly excited and anxious, like, about being a mom, but not stressed about the pregnancy. Like, I knew, like, statistically that, there could be a loss and things like that, but I didn't think about it. I was very, like, excited that whole pregnancy. It was a very joyous experience, very different than this pregnancy, which I'll get into. So with that, like, when I was ready to try for my second, which was when my son was 18 months, so that was like a year and a half ago. He's now almost like 3 next week, so 18 months ago. I was like, okay, great. Like, I kind of planned it in my mind. I wanted to be like a little over 2 years age gap. I like planned exactly, okay, I want to have a baby at this time of year. And I just thought that because last time I got pregnant the first try,
it would
kind of be like
happen
that
again.
Yeah. No, this is like the whole thing of motherhood is you cannot plan anything.
But. No. Exactly. And I'd never heard of secondary infertility before. Like, I knew people who had gone through fertility struggles and done treatment for their first and maybe their second because of the first, but I didn't really know that secondary infertility was a thing. I never really heard anybody talk about it. And for me, my secondary infertility came from the fact that postpartum, like, my cycle just became completely off. I nursed for 6 months, but I didn't get my period for over a year, which was another red flag. Like, even when I go to the doctor, they were like, let's try to get this on track. We can give you something to induce the period.
I was the opposite.
Yours came back right away.
I was the opposite. I didn't get a period. I didn't think I was going to get pregnant with my first. We actually went to a fertility clinic. We did all the testing. I got induced for a period. They gave me pills for a period. I got pregnant with that. And then the day I found out I was pregnant, the fertility clinic called and I kind of was like, I'm pregnant. I don't want to talk to you, which, like, I know was like so exciting. But at the same time, obviously, I should have listened. I should have, like,
if your period's off, it's like a sign.
And then as soon as I had my first kid, I got a regular period until I got pregnant with my second. And now we're back to square one. So it's all over the place.
There's an incredible fertility doctor who I follow on Instagram. She's a podcast. Her name's Natalie Crawford. She has her own fertility clinic. And I started following all these fertility people when I was going through it because I found it comforting. Right. And you have to learn all this stuff. And she says, like, and she said this so many times, that your menstrual cycle is like a vital sign in a way. Like, it really tells you a lot about your health and your hormones. Anyway, so after a year, I still didn't get my period. And then, like, I think I got it like maybe when he was 14 or 15 months. And then from then on, for those like 3 or 4 months that I was like not trying, but I was just kind of waiting for my period, my cycle was bizarre. I had like really short cycles, really long cycles. Like
Wow.
I started tracking in the sense where I would like take the ovulation predictor kits just because I knew that in a few months I'd want to try and I wanted to figure it out. And they were so off. Like my numbers were so weird. I never had a positive ovulation. Like it was so bizarre. And I was like, oh, maybe these kits aren't sensitive enough. Anyways, when we started trying, I think my cycles were anywhere from like 30 to 50 days, which is not
Crazy.
normal.
That's long.
Yeah, weird and long. And it just like I knew right away that something kind of wasn't working. So after like 3 months, I went to my OB, and I know that things I'll reference here. Like I live in the US, so the healthcare system is very different. It's much more like a la carte in the way, like you don't have to wait in certain ways. So I made an appointment right away with my OB, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, and she kind of put me in like this fertility algorithm, where it's like, okay, so if you're not ovulating, let's get you on ovulation induction medication, like a letrozole or a Clomid.
Right.
And then we'll bring you back in halfway through your cycle to see if your follicles are growing. And then like you go do your thing and hopefully you're pregnant. And at the OB, they do like base level fertility. But maybe this was just specifically the OB that I was at. It's not very personalized. And I didn't know that because I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right.
So I did that for a few months, and I would go in and it would say that my follicles were big enough, and then I would never ovulate. So the medication like for months just didn't work for me. Because every time I would get my progesterone checked, which is like the way you confirm ovulation,
right,
it was 0, which means I hadn't ovulated yet, and it was like 27 days. And it was just
Wow.
bizarre. So I'm like, okay, I guess like I just have an ovulation disorder, which I did. Just never release an egg. Like I'd have multiple follicles grow and they would just chill there, and then they would never release an egg. And so I was kind of in this like, I was on that fertility medication for a few months, and I got pregnant completely unknowingly and unsure of how that even happened, because I had started the next round of medication. Because my cycle was so off, they weren't doing regular blood work. It kind of just flew under the radar. I don't know. I still don't know to this day when I conceived, how it happened. I must have had one ovulation. It could have been on like the 57th day.
Crazy.
It was just so impossible to know because of how weird my cycles were. And I didn't find out. I found out because I started having some weird symptoms, and I thought maybe it was from the medication, and it wasn't. And this was like a year ago almost, like the beginning of October last year, and I got a positive test, and I was like, oh, I don't know how this happened because I don't know any of the dates, but yay. And I was very excited.
Of course.
And I had gone in, or I had like some weird pain. So I went in at like 6 weeks to get blood work, and then a couple of days later, and there was strong heartbeat and everything, but they couldn't date the pregnancy because my period was like 6 weeks before. So it would like, I would have been like 10 weeks, but I wasn't 10 weeks because the baby was measuring. It was just like, I knew maybe when, but it was just really confusing. So it was just very off. But nonetheless, we were very excited. At that point, it was still like, longer age gap than I wanted. But I was pregnant, and for like a month, I was pregnant. And then at my like 8 to 9 week appointment, I went in, and there was no heartbeat, which I know a lot of women like have that experience. And the doctor says, "Oh, I'm sorry, there's no heartbeat." Like it was just awful. Like we were sitting in the waiting room, and I was so excited. Like Jacob was
of course.
With me, thank God. I was like, I can't believe it. And like we took a video of like, we're about to see the baby. Like I should have taken the video. And then we went in, and he knew like a second they put the probe in. He's a doctor. He can kind of understand this stuff a little.
Right, of course.
And she like wasn't saying anything, the ultrasound tech.
Oh God.
And I was like, is everything okay? And she was like, I'm just trying to find a heartbeat. And then she kind of like moved around for a little. She was like, sorry, I'm not seeing it. And I was like, no, you
right
have
away.
to.
She said it to you.
Cause yeah, like, and then now looking back, like it was just not, they kind of squirm around a little at like 8, 9 weeks. And it was just not, it was like just not moving. And it was like the worst day. It was just the worst day. I just immediately started bawling. Like, this is my worst nightmare. Everything I thought in my life was going to happen was just taken away. And they kind of like shuttled me into another room with the doctor, and she was really wonderful. She was like, "Well, you're far enough along that we're gonna need to do like a DNC surgery to remove everything from your uterus." And I just was like, "Oh my god." I went from like having a baby to like having this surgery to like remove the baby. And it was just so horrible. Like my parents came that weekend and my surgery wasn't for like 3 days because it was a Friday. And we just kind of like, it was the weirdest weekend because I was like pregnant. I knew there was like a life that was not there that was in me. It was so weird. And I mean, I've worked through the grief a lot. And I feel at peace with it now, but it was just very much, it was just the worst. And I know women who had multiple of these, and like I still think about it. I still think about how that felt. I still think about like that baby, and like we actually did genetic testing to see if anything was wrong. Um, and it was just like a chromosome thing. They thought it was something way more serious, actually, called like a partial molar pregnancy,
What's
Oh.
that?
which it's when the baby develops cancerous cells, and
Oh God.
it's like it's like part fetus, part cancer. Like a molar pregnancy is like it appears a pregnancy, but it's cancer, or it's
Right.
cancer, or it's a tumor kind of thing. And again, I'm not a doctor, so I don't know if these are like the exact correct like terms and
Right.
things. Um, so I was kind of like waiting for that information, and it was just like it was weird time. It was like November last year. I just it was just not a good time for me. I sort of retreated from like everybody in my life for a little and just stayed really insular. I did share about it on social media, which was the
Yes.
best thing I did, actually,
Yes.
because I had a lot of comfort and, understanding and just care from people. Even just hearing people's stories who I don't even know was so.
So comforting. I
Yeah.
completely agree with you on that.
Yeah.
And even as like a fellow mom who like didn't go through something similar, and when I saw that, I was like, oh my
We
God.
feel
Like
for
I like
you.
I was crushed. Like you just like the feeling of the happiness, and then like I can't imagine, but I can only imagine like what that would feel like to like have it taken away. And it's not even like a baby yet. Like it's so early, but it's
No.
still it's
Yeah.
I don't know,
part
there's
of
so-
you.
yeah, it's part of you. Wow, that's
Definitely.
so
And I
tough.
think this happens to some women, like even before they're pregnant, which is called like a chemical pregnancy. And even
Yes.
people who've had chemical pregnancies where you never see a heartbeat, you never see anything on ultrasound yet, but you're pregnant and then you get your period. So even like a loss even earlier than me, it's still like a loss. It's just it's the weirdest experience. Um to like it was just for me, like for a month I was just planning and so excited about everything, and then it just wasn't.
It just gets
I feel
taken.
like
It gets taken away from
that's
you.
the thing that actually sticks with me the most is that once the day you find out you're pregnant, your brain starts going and you start planning and you start imagining and you start doing,
Everything.
and like that's like that world or that life is ripped away from you. Like I never thought about it
In a
like that way,
second.
but it's
In 1 second.
Yeah,
It's really, I mean, it's awful. I had my son and my husband were amazing. I mean, obviously my son didn't understand, but just having him around, like he sort of took me out of things because I had to be present with him, and
Right.
I still had to be his mom, even though I had lost the baby that I was going to be another mom to. So I think that I feel blessed in the sense where I had a lot of support, and I kind of had Jacob and Miles to ground me. Um, but it was just a crappy time. And then we went into this few months where I couldn't try or couldn't do anything because you have to sort of wait for your period to come again, which for me was like a
oh
really long
gosh,
time. So in that time also was a little bit of a blessing. We went to a wedding in Miami. We had a lot of fun. We did some travel. I just kind of like couldn't think about trying to conceive,
Right.
couldn't think about anything, and it was like a nice fun break. Um, and then when I was ready to start conceiving again, I actually switched OBs. Just I didn't like it's a good office, but just the way everything went down, I just didn't feel like it was
No, you
good.
wanted
right
a
fit.
change. You wanted a
Yeah.
change and a fresh start.
Yes, a fresh start. So I kind of went through the whole cycle a few times again with the medication and the blood work, and again like nothing. Like, it was just showing like no ovulation, nothing like. And I was like, I'm kind of like, it's been several months of this. I think I'm gonna go see an expert. In my mind, I was like, oh, I don't qualify, or I can't go to see a fertility doctor because, you know, I don't have, like, I don't know really what my issue is. And I kind of like tried to talk myself out of it a little, but then I was like, no, I know something's wrong. It's okay to go to fertility doctor before a year. You know, it had only been like 6 months or so. Um, it's like I need to advocate for myself
Yeah,
and get
that's
answers.
amazing.
And I know like that's not available to everyone to just like make an appointment and go. But for me, like I just decided this is going to be a priority and I'm going to figure this out. And as soon as I switched over to the fertility doctor, everything changed because they go through things so differently. Like you're monitored almost too much. Like for some people that could probably be anxiety inducing because you're like there every other day. Um like blood work, ultrasounds, but they really like the good ones don't miss things and they do and they're smart and they really understand the individuality of your specific cycle
I
and your
guess because they're
specific.
really specialized in this. Like they
Yeah.
see this all day, every day. So it
Right.
makes sense.
Yeah. So I had gone in, I had like I had 2 cycles with them, and in the second one I got pregnant, which was
Wow.
great. So we knew what my issue was. My issue was that I wasn't ovulating. My body didn't ovulate. So it took like, so you take blood work and you get ultrasounds every other day until your follicle is ready to release an egg. And this is medicated. So I was again on that
Right.
same medication. So when my follicle is just sort of stuck at that size doesn't release eggs, then they give you like a medication called Overdrill, which is an injection. It's called a trigger shot. And ultimately that's what worked for me. I just needed that to
A little
Like a
boost.
little hump to get over
Yeah.
or a little push to
Um,
get over the hump.
yeah. So I took the trigger shots and it worked.
Wow.
And we learned what was wrong with me, which was I had an ovulation issue. Um, some people, their issue is more, from the man. So they do things like IUI or, you have genetic issues or you try all these things, they don't work. So you go to IVF, which is a much more involved process. But the span of fertility treatment there's a lot of options. And I think that should give people a lot of confidence, hopefully.
Right.
And it's like something, for me, like over a year later, like I think patience and just trying to be like, I know this is going to be something one day. I know we're going to figure this out. I'm going to advocate for myself. I really tried to keep that top of mind, even though there were so many discouraging moments along the way. Like I
Yeah.
remember when I got my AMH tested, which is like they did a whole bunch of testing when I first moved over to the fertility clinic to try to rule out anything or guide their treatments. So AMH is well, I don't know how to anti-Mullerian hormone or something. Basically indicates your egg reserve. So my egg reserve was extremely low, like 0.3 or something. I think normal is like over 1 or 1.6 or something. Again, I don't know the exact numbers because I'm not a doctor, but it was really low. And the day that I got that, I was like, oh my God, I have no eggs. This is never going to work. I was so
Right.
discouraged because you read a lot about people who get those tests online. And it's like, oh, I had low AMH. And then my doctor said I had to immediately go to IVF because like I needed to retrieve all the eggs I could possibly have first. And I
Right.
guess it
That makes
depends on
sense.
your treatment or your doctor and things like that. But I just, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be years long. And I was so discouraged. But then they called me and they said, this does not mean that you don't have good eggs. This just means you don't have as many. And that
Hmm.
we need to make sure that each cycle we do everything we can. They said you will get pregnant with low AMH. It does not mean you don't have any eggs. This is just sort of how many come out each cycle because all you need is one good egg.
Right.
Right.
All you need. So people with really high AMH and they have so many eggs, a lot of them aren't good, and there's those issues there too.
Right.
So it made me feel a lot better that they use that as sort of a tool to guide to treatment rather than give me all these like, well, this could mean all these really bad things that we're gonna. So there were days like that, and then, so if someone's listening and you have low AMH, you can still get pregnant.
Yes.
No, this is like a whole other world. Like it really feels like already you're going through the loss and then you have like all this complicated information of these words and phrases and numbers and values
You're
and blah,
learning
blah,
it
blah.
all.
You need like a manual just to deal with it. Like I think
And we're not taught any of this.
No, nobody tells you any of this. And you're not going to learn it because you don't think you're going to be the one with fertility issues.
Right.
And then even like in your scenario, you got pregnant number 1, bing, bing,
Not
boom, it was
thinking
fine.
anything. Yeah.
And next thing you know, you have issues. So like what would be your best advice for somebody going through this, maybe like on the early end of it? Like they just experienced a loss or something.
Or
like,
having fertility
yeah, they're
issues.
having fertility issues. Like having been now on the other side of it, like what's your best advice to someone like that?
For the loss and just in the trying to conceive process intertwined, whether you're just trying month after month and it's not working, or you're seeking treatment, or treatment didn't work, or you still don't have answers, there will be two things that I think are most important. One is to advocate for yourself. So make sure that you are with a healthcare provider that it has your best interest, that has personal care for you, that is responsive and is takes the time to explain things, because it is very confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And even like I loved my fertility doctor, but I even had friends who were going through similar things at the same time, which was a huge help for me. Like we would text all the time, and they were like a few steps ahead of me, so they had so much information to share,
Right.
Yeah.
which was
The
so
mom
helpful.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like so one, advocating for yourself and making sure you're in good care. Like this is your life, this is your family planning. It's really important for you to feel like you're cared for. It's never a bad idea to get a second opinion. You know, healthcare advocacy was like a big one for me. And with the loss, like for any sort of grief cycle, I think a lot of people are very quick to like move out of it as fast as they can. But giving time to move through that grief and to understand that it is something that's going to impact who you are, and allowing yourself to process that is really important. Even if you pause for a few months for your mental health, or in my case, I had to wait a few months, and I think that was really helpful for me. Um, and just knowing that like it's not your fault.
Right.
Mhm.
I think that's the biggest one. It's not your fault.
I love that.
Yeah. I When I first had the loss, I was like, "Oh my god, it's my fault. I took that medication. I didn't get blood work. I didn't know." And it just wasn't my fault. Like it was just the way the cells aligned. Um and I really try, cuz when it's in your body, it's hard to be like, "Oh, something bad happened in my body," but I couldn't prevent it.
Right.
So it's really hard to sort of separate it, because it feels so personal, because it's literally in your body, but it's
Yeah.
not your fault. And I think those two things were really big for me. And also sort of a lot of people said this to me when I first had the loss, or I was posting about it, and I could never feel this in the moment, but I kind of held on to it. People just said like it'll make sense for you one day.
Aw.
And that like kind of stuck with me, stayed with me throughout, like even through all the months of the treatment and just not understanding, and all the bad news, the good news. And fertility is very up and down. Like you get
Yeah.
excited at the beginning of the cycle, and then you get maybe sad or hopefully happy at the end. And it's a lot of ups and downs. So
Well, yes. Well,
And-
here you are.
And now,
yeah.
and
Here
now,
you
does that
are.
advice make a bit more sense to you now that you're on this
You're
end
on
of
the
it?
opposite side now.
Yeah, I mean, I made it to the other side, which is I'm very grateful for. Um, after a couple of months of treatment, they get worked. And we've held on to the pregnancy now for 22 weeks. So I'm now a little bit past the stage of like feeling anxious about something.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Just because things have been progressing nicely. But the first couple of weeks or months, I was just like every day, I was like, okay, is this baby still around? Like every day, I was like, this could be the
No,
worst.
but it
day.
totally,
lot.
it totally makes sense.
How can you not? Like, how
Yeah.
could you not feel like that?
And I think they understand that. Like at the doctor, I went every week to check. And usually they'll be like, oh, great, we'll see you in 8 weeks or whatever it is.
No, you
Well,
wanted
like,
to
for a
have
regular-
the confirmation that everything's
Yeah.
going okay because of what you've gone through. It's totally understandable.
Yeah, like a regular pregnancy for us, like we have an ultrasound at like 8 weeks and then 20 weeks. And you have no idea what's going on in between. Like if I was in her, I would be like,
I'd
I'd be anxious.
yeah, you'd
like
be
for
so
sure,
anxious.
you want to have more checks.
And at the fertility doctors, especially at the beginning, they do a lot of monitoring so that they have a lot of like tools in their toolbox that if things weren't necessarily progressing in certain ways, they could give you certain medication or progesterone. I know people who do IVF have to take progesterone like injection in their butt for like weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, God.
Yeah,
it's a
it's not
lot.
fun.
So it's a lot of monitoring. And I think like once I kind of graduated from fertility and went to my OB, I was even to them, I'm like, I'm coming in 2 weeks. And they were like, we don't usually do that. Like you will bill your insurance, but like they may not pay for it. I'm like, I don't care. Like I need to come. And yeah. So now I'm more than halfway, which is wild.
Well,
That's
we're
great.
excited for you.
Yeah,
You're about to
Thank you.
have
And
two.
Are you?
Are you?
Does Miles know? Like, what's like? Is he excited?
Yeah, he's really excited. He's like, he gets things now.
Yeah,
And
at 3.
he has been asking, like for months, he's been asking for a sibling because his friends at school have had baby sisters or
Right.
brothers.
Aw.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm trying.
I'm trying.
If only you knew what I've
Yeah.
had to go through
Yeah,
to get
one
you a
day
sibling.
we'll explain it to him. But he's so excited now. And like every night he likes to say goodnight and
Aw.
give
It's
a
very
kiss
sweet.
and things like that. So I think
Well,
he's
we're
gonna be a
excited
good
for
big
you.
brother.
Yeah, we're excited for you. 2 is definitely
Two is a whole other
it's a journey.
ball game.
But I do think, like, I know you were talking about like the time between it. Like Amanda had her kids like 16 months apart
Wow.
because she also was like planning and then was
It took me a while with my first, so I thought, okay, let's not stress on the second. And I had problems with the first, and the second I got pregnant on my first shot. So I was like the complete opposite.
Yeah.
and then I was more like 2.5 plus, but like now it's really nice because the 3-year-old can like understand the baby and they can
Oh,
play
yeah.
and whatever, and it's like really cute.
I
Yeah.
see that also. Like I'm obviously grateful with everything that happened, but seeing the difference between like a 2-year age gap is like a very nice 2 to 3 years is really, really nice. Like I had 2 babies at home.
Yeah, you had 2
Like,
babies.
I had 2 babies, 2 in pacifiers, 2 in shit diapers, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do with you 2?
And now
that
they're
is a whole different.
Yeah.
That is, yeah. Me and my sister are also like 17 months apart.
it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's actually crazy.
It's crazy. It's really nice. There's pros and cons to
All
of
both.
it.
To
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, the con of my age gap now is that my 3-year-old is like, why isn't he running?
Yeah, like, why
isn't
can't he play with
running?
me?
And I'm like, because he's 4 months old.
Like
he's
hurry it along.
Yeah, I was like, he'll come soon.
Yeah, he just wants him to play.
Exactly.
Yes, and they will get there. Now they're doing secrets. Arlo and Ace yesterday they were like standing in the corner like doing secrets.
Oh,
Is
God.
it doing secret? Yeah, doing secrets. Like I'm like, can
Oh,
you tell me
God.
the secret? Like, what are you doing?
You have a terrorizing house coming your way.
Yeah, you saw what they did yesterday. Yesterday, I was sitting in the living room with my brother for maybe a minute. The 2 of them were in Arlo's room. All the clothes from the entire
Everywhere.
room on the bed.
Oh my-
Maybe a minute. Maybe a minute.
I know.
That's
Well,
true.
that's the yeah. Toddler boys when they get together are wild.
Wild.
Yeah.
Like, wild. I don't know how. Yeah. You're, I don't know. Is your gender a secret for the new
no,
pregnancy?
it's not a secret.
Okay. So Sari's having a girl. So she's going to have
Ooh, you get.
some girl energy in her life. So
I feel like we all need some girl energy in our life.
I mean, I was very excited that it was a girl. I definitely wanted a girl because I believe I'm done at 2, so I kind of wanted one of each.
Right.
But I would have been just over the moon if I had 2 brothers. You know,
Yeah.
whatever it was, it would have
Yeah.
been just wonderful.
Just a healthy baby.
Chaotic,
That's all.
but
That's all
wonderful.
we want is a healthy,
Always.
happy.
yeah, I just
baby.
wanted it to happen. But because I was way sicker, this pregnancy has been a lot worse, like physically. But it's interesting because I don't find myself complaining as much because I'm just, even though it's so much worse than my first one, I'm just like, okay, I really wanted this. This
Yeah.
is like, it means things are moving along. And
yeah, it's true.
No, you like
I just
fought for
feel
it.
a little more, I have way more gratitude this pregnancy. It was like a lot more anxiety and now it's a lot more gratitude. Like, even last night I was so nauseous. Like I felt like I was like 8 weeks again.
Oh, gosh.
And I just ate like butter noodles and ice cream. Like it just like happened. And I was on the not anxiety, the nausea medication till like last week. I stopped taking it.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Well, I guess like your journey gives you like a lot of perspective.
That's
that, like,
exactly. That's what it is.
Yeah, and you now can like look at this pregnancy in a completely different lens, and it's your story is very powerful, and I think a lot of people are really going to resonate with it. And like, thank you for sharing, because I know like not everybody's open, and it's scary
It's
to
hard.
talk about. But I think it's like really important that more people do, because I'm sure tons
happens.
of people, not in your specific story, but very similar, I'm sure, and like
They go through it all.
Yeah, they probably feel very alone.
I think fertility is, I mean, my story was like a year and a little, and it was a horrible year. It was, we experienced loss and infertility, and it was a big struggle. But I know that there are people who are like, oh, I've been experiencing infertility for 7 years, and it is just because I think the best word I can find to like describe infertility is just like it's unfair.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like I feel grateful that my
Yeah.
journey we figured it out rather quickly, and it's just so unfair that someone else is still waiting. And it's
Trying.
not like someone getting pregnant is going to prevent someone else from getting pregnant. It's just so individual.
Yeah.
And there's just so many factors that go into it. It's just the most unfair thing. And I think a lot of people feel a lot of shame around fertility, because it's sort of, because people just ask you like, hey, when are you having kids, or when are you having another
I
one?
know.
It's sort of like embarrassing and shameful in a way, but it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be, because it's just some people go through this, and it needs to be talked about more and normalized more and shared more, because it is the reality for so many people.
I agree.
And yeah, it's just such an unfair process. And like, thank goodness for all the technology we have now, and for all the expertise and doctors
Yes,
that
we
are
are
out
very
there.
we are fortunate with that now, and with people like you coming on and talking about everything, us and our podcast talking about everything, being unfiltered and just like putting it out there. Women need to put it out there.
I agree.
Yeah.
And careful what questions you ask people, because you never know
what's
the
going
story
on
behind the
closed
scenes.
doors.
Like, I know people say, oh, where's your second kid? When are you having this? Like, you never know someone's story. So
Right.
like,
Yeah.
it's a personal journey, and it's not really people's business.
Right.
To be
It's
honest.
And there are people in my life who I believe don't ever want kids. And I think that's their wonderful decision if that's a life they want to
agree.
live.
Right.
I totally agree.
And I think putting shame on people who decide they don't want to have kids
It's not fair.
is not fair either. Like, I think
No.
family planning is such a personal thing, and it's important to share the different ways people get to family planning, like, fertility and things like that, so people in the community can feel heard and less alone and supported. But it's just again like a personal thing. It needs to be less shameful, I think.
I agree. I love that. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Thanks, Sarah. No, I just
it's so
it's
true.
beautiful. And just so everyone knows, Sari also started a podcast with her sister. Just tell us like 2 seconds about it, because I think it's good. It's like a different topic than us.
Yes.
But some people who have older kids might find it really interesting.
Yeah. So my sister is she is a parent coach, and she's a BCBA and works with parents on behaviors for kids. And every time I have any sort of issue or question, I call her, and she just always has such wonderful answers, and she's so educated and wise, I believe, in her approach. And so one day I was like, we got to start a podcast. So we have a podcast on more like parenting behaviors. So we have an episode on tantrums, on discipline, on screen time. We're going to do an episode on like how to raise girls in 2024 kind of time.
Yes.
She has 3
Yeah,
daughters.
that's a good one.
That's great.
Yeah, we have an anxiety episode on postpartum anxiety and motherhood. And she has 3 kids, which is just wonderful for her to draw on that experience. But she's so educated and rational and calm in the way she approaches parenting. And I'm just so happy to have disseminated that information. So it's called Sisters to Moms podcast.
Love it.
I can send you a link so that you
send it.
But if you have a toddler struggling with tantrums, you need to listen to the tantrum episode.
We will.
I listened to the little reel of it, and I was like, this is really smart.
Okay, we will listen.
Ever since that episode, because I'm learning from her as we're recording.
Of course.
Like, I'm drawing on my experience with a 3-year-old, and she's kind of sharing
I
ways
love that.
to approach it.
Smart.
So it's sort of like my own personal therapy and behavior coaching for my kids.
I love it.
On a podcast. So
Love that.
it's been really fun. It's just like a fun project that we're doing.
Cute. That's amazing. Love that. Well, thank you again for coming on today.
Yes.
And it's funny how life has come full
Full
circle.
circle for you guys.
From our partying in fraternity basements to like talking about
motherhood.
and yeah.
Like sometimes I'm like, what is life? How
I
do
know.
I live in like this random suburb in Michigan with a kid? Like who? It's just so random sometimes. But
I
I
still
know.
feel like I'm like 18. Like,
Me
am I going to
too.
the club? Like, are we?
And
Like,
like,
we're going out this weekend, and I'm like, oh my God, what time are we coming? Like, are we drinking before? Like, what's our plan?
I have to remind myself that I'm 33.
And like,
you guys-
have to go home to kids.
33.
are you guys going to Kygo on the?
Yes!
Why?
You are?
Yeah, I love Kygo.
Same. I delivered Arlo to Kygo. He came out to happy birthday
Yeah,
by accident. He came out when happy birthday was playing. It was
that
insane.
is so funny.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
so we'll see you
I
there.
We'll see you there.
Also, the best part about Kygo is that it's 5 to 9.
I know.
I know. I was so excited about that.
They were like, he made this for.
They like knew that
For
all
the
of us were
moms.
going to be there. They knew we were all going to be there.
I mean, I'm
They knew
going
it's
with
one
another
person,
pregnant
right?
friend, so we're gonna be loving life. I actually went to see Kygo in the like weird period of June, like of the spring of 2021, when I guess in the U.S. life had sort of started again because people were getting like in COVID, things were very different in the U.S. Like we got vaccines a lot earlier. But I went to COVID at Red Rocks when I was 6 months pregnant with Miles in June
So fun.
2021, and now
Wow.
I'm going again.
I'm like so excited. I've never seen
my
it.
God.
I'm like really pumped.
Oh, it's gonna be so good.
well, we will
like,
see you there.
time. Yeah, maybe I will see you there.
I love that.
I love.
Just look for the 2 bumps, me and Zoe. It will be there.
Oh, we're going to the zoo? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Amazing.
We'll see you guys there.
Well,
Love
Sari,
that.
thank you so much. This was amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. And I want to say we will see you soon.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And it's been an honor to chat with you about this. And I hope I can reach and help some people feel less alone.
Well,
Yeah, for sure.
you will.
All right.
Okay,
Well,
guys.
see you next week. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.